Hello, welcome to a new episode of Rants with Danny Shi. Today is November 2nd, full week after Game 7 of the Taiwan Series, actually less than 24 hours since, did I say Game 7 of the Taiwan Series? I meant Game 5 of the Taiwan Series, and then Game 7 of the World Series happened just less than 24 hours ago. And just like Games 4, 5, and the supposed to be happening, Game 6 and 7, a long delay for this podcast as I got life going on. But the Taiwan series was won this year's playoff, actually, as a whole, was one to be in the record books, not only because it is my Rakuten Monkeys who ended up winning the Taiwan series, but it is the first time that a team without a half season championship wins the Taiwan series. It's the first time that a team goes into the wild card game or the playoff series as a wild card, goes down 2-0 because the Lions, or the one with a half season championship, gets an automatic 1-0 advantage starting at first pitch of the series, but they lost game one, the Monkeys did, and then comes back. I wish they were down like in game they were down in game two, which they were down 2-0 in already. Late in that game, the eighth inning, I believe. And then found their way to claw their way back. I think at the time the Lions, I talked about this a little bit in the last episode when the Monkeys beat the Lions and advanced to the Taiwan series, but there was a little bit of I think a little bit of a looking ahead for the Union Lions because everybody was anticipating the Lions to face the Brothers in the Taiwan series, but the Monkeys three straight. Win three straight. They shade off, or they kept the Hawks away from a playoff spot late in the regular season with basically a one-game playoff in Jiayi. They go on, they beat the Lions in the playoff series, and they took that momentum. I did not in the last episode I did not really study the rest of the schedule between the playoff and the Taiwan series. However, there was even if when the playoff series went on to all four games to take place to play all four games, the Monkeys still had like 3 or 4 days in the middle after the playoff series to gather themselves, to lick their wounds, and then they play against a Brothers team who had been off for 2 weeks. And as much as I don't like to talk about scheduling or things that scheduling or field conditions and things like that, where half the time, like field conditions, for example, both teams are playing the same field, so there really isn't an excuse there. Scheduling, there's pros and cons either way. Um, it's just the way that it played out. Now you can find excuses, but reasoning saying, "Oh, hey, they had 2 weeks off. Are we sure the schedule is fair?" Or, well, then I ask you, do you want to go play another playoff series? Should we let four teams in, and so you, as the number one seed, has to play a high profile winner take all playoff series, and if you lose, you're now thinking, why do we have first round buys, considering we won a half season championship and the best overall record? So I don't like to talk about stuff like that, but at the end of the day, you can look back and say, hey, what the Monkeys comes in. I think the Monkeys came in with the momentum that the Brothers could never have taken because the Brothers had 2 weeks off. The Monkeys came off winning 3 straight elimination games, going into the Taiwan series. They knew that they were 500 overall. They knew that they were the third best team. They knew that um, they were not really in the same stratosphere, I would say, as a Brothers or Alliance, for example. But they were coming in. I believe they had a belief in themselves, a confidence in themselves, and they really were playing with house money. And then they go in and they win the first 2 games. They dropped game 3, but then crucially, I think what really favored the Monkeys. And again, this is not if they're doing, but um, rain came in. There was the first 3 games happened in the dome, which I think remember reading or listening to commentary at the time. It was, oh, we're so glad these games are happening in the dome, because if it were happening anywhere else in an outdoor stadium, we would have not played because the entire island at the time was raining. And then by game 4, it was the same deal, and it was going to go. The rain was supposed to go on for 3 or 4 consecutive days. And so both teams came together in the league and decided mutually that they were going to postpone game 4, which the Monkeys were up by 2-1 by this point. The game 4 is supposed to happen on October 22nd, Wednesday. They pushed it all the way. They had delayed it for 1 day. So the morning of October 22nd, I don't think we even reached noon, but it was very early. But they're like, oh, we're not gonna play. It's been raining for a week. It's been raining for 72 business hours. We're not gonna do this. And then it was clear that the rain was gonna continue, so they met up and they decided to move game 4 all the way to Sunday. So on Thursday, they decided to move it to Sunday, and then they're gonna play 4 straight games. 4, 5, 6, 7. We're gonna go consecutive days. They're gonna play game 4 in Taoyuan, game 5, 6, and 7 in Taichung. And I think both teams benefited. By the way, I do think that both teams had a chance. Look, if the results had gone either way, both teams could argue that the break benefited them. For the Monkeys side, you now have Marcelo Rodriguez and Pedro Fernandez for games 3 and 4. Or you not 3 and 4. You now have Pedro Fernandez and Marcelo Rodriguez back to back again, and those were 2 aces, and those were, you've got to understand. I think coming into this series, it was really clear that the brothers had the overwhelming depth, and the Monkeys really have to put all of their money on momentum coming into the game, coming into this series. The brothers held a 14-10 overall record. Marcelo Martinez, I apologize, not Rodriguez, Marcelo Martinez. But Marcelo Martinez and Pedro Fernandez were the 2 aces that the Monkeys had, and those really were the 2 players that the Monkeys had a chance. They gave the Monkeys a chance to go up against the juggernaut of a roster that is the CTBC Brothers. And you can tell from games 1 and 2, the fact that Martinez and Pedro Fernandez held the brothers to just 1 run total in those first 2 games, plus the best bullpen in the league, starting with Chen Guanyu, the best reliever in Taiwan right now, and Zhu Chengxiang, one out of the blue, really good closer for the Monkeys. That's how they kept the brothers from scoring, and besides just 1 time in the first 18 innings of baseball. Now, all of the conversation was, is Pedro Fernandez going to pitch 3 games? Is Marcelo Martinez going to start 3 games? Is he going to start 1, 4, and 7? And if they had dropped any of those 2 games, now you're really on the back foot, because then do you bring your ace in with just 3 days rest, which probably would hinder their performance, etc., etc. And what really worked for the Monkeys was the first 2 games they picked up both of their games on quote unquote when as their visitor on the road, but essentially they were in Taipei Dome, so it was more of a neutral site. And then game 3 was also in Taipei Dome, quote unquote. The Monkeys was hosting, but it's kind of a neutral site. But the Monkeys grabbed those 2 wins. They were up 2-0, and they held all the cards. Their only question was, do they have the depth? Is Huang Zipeng Tiger, or is the rest of the starting rotation going to hold up and not having to basically become a best of 3 series between 5, 6, and 7, where all 3 games are all going to be in Taichung? because the brothers did have 5-game home field advantage for the Taiwan series. So even when the Monkeys were up 2-0, you're thinking if game 3 is a neutral site game, we let the brothers, well, no, we're not letting, but the brothers pick up game 3, which they did, as and they pick up game 4 because you probably ran out of starters, or your game 4 starter isn't as strong as the brothers, which would have very well be the case because your depth is not as strong as the brothers. Now it's a 2-2 series, and you go back to Taichung for all 3 games, the best of 3. What really worked well for the Monkeys is you have that break. So you have basically a 4-day break between Tuesday and Sunday, and now Pedro Fernandez, Marcelo Martinez is back in. That being said, the same can be said about the CTBC Brothers. Both of their aces are back in play. And it starts with Nivaldo Rodriguez. He's the absolute ace of the team, of the brothers. He had a 1.84 ERA and in the regular season in 2025. And then you brought in, because game 5 you were kind of on the back foot. The Monkeys have a 3-1 lead. Now you bring in both the foreign pitcher for game 5, which I'm totally fine with. You're playing with all. You've got to go all in. But my point is, you had a chance in game 4 with also your ace on the mound in Rodriguez. And to be honest with you, Rodriguez pitched a better game in game 4. It's just the Monkeys. Chen Cheng-Wei had a 2-run home run in the 8th inning that basically put the Monkeys over the top, and then now you going back to Taichung, and then you're down 3-1. I was gonna. Oh, there's on the break as well. You've also kind of realized Tao Yuan was raining the whole time, and so the Monkeys could only practice in the indoor batting cages or some of the smaller indoor facilities, whereas the brothers apparently was working out, practicing in Taichung Intercontinental Stadium because Taichung wasn't as rainy. And so you can argue from both sides. I'm saying, like, at the end of the series, if the brothers had came out on top, you could have said the same thing about the break being a nice break for the brothers, because they gained a little bit of momentum. They basically have bring their Rodriguez out for game 4, and give themselves a chance again. And they tied up the series, and it's a best of 3 in Taichung, all 3 games. And so, as much as the break, you can argue that the break benefited the Monkeys. I could say the same thing about the brothers, but that was undoubtedly a major story point for this series, because it really did affect both teams, and it reimagined the series a little bit. Now you're talking about splitting a 7-game series into 2, first to 4 wins, but you have 3 games back games at first, and then you have 4 straight games afterwards. And I think you cannot make an argument that break did not change how that series was going. I do think that the brothers overall, it was the cards that they were dealt was not as advantageous for them, because, like I mentioned, the brothers is all about depth. The brothers' advantage is all about depth. The Monkeys was all about momentum, and the brothers let the Monkeys grab on the momentum by losing the first 2 games. The momentum only got stronger and stronger, and the only thing you could hang your hat on right now, especially after losing game 1 with Rodriguez on the mound, and then losing game 2 as well, 2-1, and the only thing you have right now for you is depth. But then that gets killed with that 4-day break, and then the Monkeys could send their best out of game 4, 4, 5, and maybe 6 and 7. And so, but it's not like the Monkeys geostormed the series, and so I thought it's a really really gutty win for the Rakuten Monkeys. Going into each game right now. Game one was in the Taipei Dome. It was Marcelo Martinez versus Nivaldo Rodriguez, and it's just if you watch, if you only watch game one, or if you only watch the Taiwan series, and you don't know anything about these two teams, and you're looking at, oh, you have a team that's sponsored by a Japanese corporation, and you have basically the Taiwan version of the New York Yankees, with funded by one of the most wealthiest corporations in Taiwan, and then having the best baseball brand in Taiwan. You're gonna go, oh, it's going to be between a Japanese style baseball versus Taiwanese style baseball, and you watch the game, it's going and it plays exactly like that. It's like the Monkeys play tremendous defense, backed by very strong pitching performance by Marcelo Martinez. They have the best bullpen in the league, Chen Guanyu and Zhu Chengxiang at the back end of it. Martinez gives you 7 innings, 7 innings, only 3 hits allowed, 1 walk, no earned runs, and the brothers look like they couldn't figure out Martinez at all, despite Martinez being in the league for 2 years. And then you have the Monkeys, who absolutely did not pound the ball. They didn't really hit all that well. I'm looking at their box score, and they had like, I'm only counting 1 extra base hit. And out of the 9 hits, they have 1 extra base hit, but they managed to score 3 runs. In the first inning, they scored once, a single, foul ball fly out, and then ground out to short, walk, and then a single. That brings you a run. You're not, and then you, and that's on the top of the first inning. And now all of a sudden, it feels like the Monkeys' momentum, coming off of a playoff series which they came back from 2-0. They win 3 straight. Now it looks like the momentum is just piling on. It's compounding a little bit. And then going into the third inning, that rally starts with a single, walk, single, and then Zhang Minxun's single, then Zhang Long single brings in 2. And you're like, oh, you're not, all of a sudden, you're down 3-0 against Marcelo Martinez, which again, now Marcelo Martinez pitching with more confidence, pitching with lead. It gives the ball to Chen Guanyu, who is best reliever in Taiwan right now, and hands the ball to the closer, Zhu Chengxiang, and then the game's over. And then you're like, we've done the Taiwan series so many times in the past where the winner of game 1 wins like 90% of the Taiwan series. The brothers really, again, at that point, I'm still thinking, well, the brothers still have the depth. They still have the best roster in the league. The only problem is the Monkeys saved Pedro Fernandez. And it was interesting to me how it's a little bit like the playoff series as well. I thought they were going to pitch Pedro Fernandez first, but they bring in Martinez first, and then they bring Pedro Fernandez in game 2. I think that it's a little bit like the Yankees Dodgers last year, where I thought the Monkeys had to win with either Martinez or Pedro Fernandez on the mound. That's really their only advantage, even though the brothers have a tremendous starter as well, in Nivaldo Rodriguez. But Rodriguez gave up a little bit more singles than Martinez did. And then game 1 goes to the Monkeys, and then you're thinking, oh well, maybe the Monkeys are gonna ride on that momentum again. And again, it's if you only watch this game, you're feeling okay. It's the Monkeys play disciplined baseball. It's all about singles and singles and rallies, and maybe squeeze out a few runs, and then they play tremendous defense, which they did in that game, and then behind really strong pitching, and then that's how they win. But the Monkeys throughout the season is the only team that had more than 100 errors. They have the lowest fielding percentage, which is a kind of a bad stat, honestly, if you want to measure defense capabilities because of how they score things. But undoubtedly, they still had 103 errors on the season, and that is even if it's 10 more than the Football Guardians versus the Brothers who only gave up 68 errors on the season. But if you watch these, especially the first two games, the first three games, actually the first four games of the series, you're thinking the Monkeys' defense is tremendous, and I don't really know how to evaluate besides giving the Monkeys all the props because they came in more focused, they came in more passionate, they came in more, uh, I think more of themselves. I think they came in very much feeling like they've done what they're playing with house money at this point. So they don't have as much pressure as the Brothers, who always plays with a lot of pressure in a big playoff environment with that with just playing with that brand. That's just how it is. And um and the Monkeys just came in. It's kind of like we're just gonna get what we can get, and they played out of their minds. Um, but that's the beauty of a short-term series. And you look into game two, it's kind of the same story. The game finished 2-1. The Brothers fought back a little bit after being down 2-0, but even up until that point, when the Monkeys were up 2-0 in the top of by the stretch, um, they had 9 hits and only had two runs to show for it. And the Monkeys, I think, held the um, held the momentum from game one in the playoff series. In fact, Lingley with the leadoff homer of the entire game with a solo homer at the top of the first inning, that again lets the team build on a momentum, which is the most important in a short term series. I think there's a reason why the Monkeys lost 14 out of 24 versus the Brothers all season, but within a 5-game series, they won 4 games. And the Brothers just didn't have a lot of juice. They really just didn't have a lot of juice until the 7th inning with Xu Jinhong's double, 1-out double. That's when you're seeing a little bit of fight from the Brothers, and then they ended up scoring on and after that Zhang Zixian with the grounder to move Xu Jinhong to third, and then they scored on a wild pitch. And that's how you score the only run in the first 18 innings of baseball. And you just didn't have a lot. The Pedro Fernandez again was tremendous. He threw 7 innings, some 3 hits allowed. One of them was the double, like I mentioned earlier. And so really, between Marcelo Martinez and Pedro Fernandez in the first 2 games of the Taiwan series, they threw 14 innings and only allowed six hits. That was the key. And when you're up 2-0, yes, I mentioned all of this stuff about the Brothers could still try to tie it up and then bring it back to Taichung, but at the end of the day, you lose the first 2 games of the series, quote unquote, at home. Which then let's talk about. We probably one day are going to talk about is having the 2 games, actually the first 3 games in a dome, that good for the quote unquote home teams um for the teams, because in the first 3 games of the series, the quote unquote away team won all 3 games. And like, is it again? It's Taipei Dome is it's like the Wembley Stadium of Taiwan. It's if you're gonna have a neutral game anywhere, that's the where it's supposed to be. And the credit to both teams, they did try to build a home field environment as much as they could, but at the end of the day, it's still a neutral site game, and it is still with the roof with being indoors, and if you pack your outfield area for your visitor team, that's still very loud. That is still a really strong presence for the away team, and so I think an argument can be made where is it all beneficial for how to having all 3 games first three between game 1 and 3 in the dome for the quote unquote home teams. But then again, um, you can't really logistically you just can't make it work. It's hard to make it work if you just go, oh, game one in the Taipei Dome and game two in, let's say, Taichung. But then if you're the Monkeys, you want one game in the Taipei Dome as well, so you're going to move game three back to the dome because of the extra ticket revenue. It's a 40,000 stadium versus a 20,000 stadium in Taoyuan and Taichung and anywhere else. And so you're like, oh, we want the ticket revenue, want to move. As logistically, it definitely makes more sense to put the first three games in the dome. But at the same time, this year, and this is the second year we have it, which is like, is it as strong of a home field advantage when you're in the dome? And if it's not, then you really got to evaluate how to, because again, if you're the Brothers and the first two games is not as big of a home field advantage, you lose those two games. Now Taoyuan has the Monkeys have all of the it has all the momentum, all of the control, and and then you have to go on the road for game 4, which it's either a 2-1 series if you win game 3, or it's a 3-0 series and going on the road. That really puts the home field team, the better record team, on the back foot. So I think it's a legitimate thing to consider, but that would take time for this format to play out because it is only the second year. I believe last year the home team won more games at home than the away team, and so in the Taipei Dome, let me just double check on that. 2024 Taiwan Series, game 1, game 2. Yeah, so last year game 1 the Brothers won 10-4 at home. They lost game 2. So after out of the first 3 games, the away team won 2 games because the Brothers came back and win in game 3. Game 3 was a Lions home game. Excuse me. And then game 1 and 2 were Brothers home games. So out of the 6 Taipei Dome Taiwan Series games, the home team only won 5 of them. I think it definitely needs probably a year or 2 more of these games to kind of figure it out. But again, logistically, if you don't go with this kind of format, and logistically, it's going to make it hard. If anything, I would think that you would move. So the first 2 games in the dome, I have no problem with. I think the first 2 games definitely deserve to be in the dome. It is the mecca of Taiwan baseball right now. The Taiwan Series is the largest Taiwanese baseball game annually. You put those 2 games in the dome, no problems about it. But can you let's say with the same record as this year, the Brothers have a home field advantage. What if you make game 1 a quote unquote Brothers home game, game 2 a quote unquote Monkeys home game, and then you start going back to the home stadiums for games 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, in the case of this year, where the Monkeys only get 2 home games and the Brothers get 5, that's just the way the formatting is. The team with the better record and a half season championship gets 5 home games. Then do you go 2 games in the dome, 1 home games for each? So basically you have a wash in terms of neutrality. So it's a neutral game for either. Neutral series in the first 2 games, which I think that's fine. I think because if you're the team with a better record, you want a better advantage to start out the series. Well, do you want to put your dome games at the end of the series when you don't know if you're going to have those games? You're going to miss out on the 2x in ticket revenue you're going to have. So the first 2 games each team hosts, and then now you have 5 games, and the Brothers at this point would host 3 of them. I think hosting 4 home games in the final 5 is a little too much. So you might go back to a 2-3-2, like a a 4-3 split where the better team gets 4 home games, quote unquote home games, and the worst record gets 3. But I think it's a conversation worth having because if if based on the last 2 years, and obviously we need more data, but based on the last 2 years, being home in the dome in the Taiwan series isn't the isn't as big of an advantage as it is being home, let's say in Taoyuan, or being home, like, let's say in Taichung. And now, if you're the better team, now you're saying, hold on a second, why am I giving up my first 2 home games, to a neutral site? And so, um, I think that's a better plan. I honestly do. I think if you cut it down to 2 games in the dome, you still get that ticket revenue, and even I don't. I'm a little. I would rather have a 3-2 split with the last 5 games, but if it's a 4-1 split, I'm okay with that too, because clearly that's been working a little bit, right? Clearly, that's what the CPBL has determined, having a uh, um, a 5-2 split versus a 4-3 split in a 7 game series. So if they're okay with that, then they might be okay with the 4-1 split with the last 5 games of the series, and then the team with the better record gets, 4 home games, and then in terms of the order, you can debate it. Do you want the away team or the worst team, the lower record team, to get one in game 3 and then 4 straight games at home, which I'm not mad about, or do you put like two, 1-1, so like home better, so the brothers get one, monkeys get another, and then 3 games, stuff like that. So I think those can be discussed, the order of which you schedule the home teams for the final 5 games. But I think a discussion is worth to be had, and might be happening, could be happening, I'm not sure, I don't know anything, but might be worth thinking about, is, do you want all the first 3 games to be in the dome? And if you're the better team, you're giving up 2 home games in the dome, which becomes a neutrality game, a neutral game. That I got into a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but the first 3 games, the brothers scored 3 runs and the monkeys scored 5. That's the story. Um, the pitching was tremendous in all 3 games. I think the monkeys, um, the monkeys held. It took a lot of momentum, but they also were backed with very strong pitching. The brothers, I think, was finding the grooves a little bit, and then I think it's the monkeys on their own. What is it? Uh, no puns intended. But for the brothers, it's the same story. If they look very familiar in terms of what was happening between mid 20 teens to 2020, where the brothers was kind of looked like they were trying to fight themselves. It was kind of like they're trying to they were a little bit more nervous. They were on the back foot, and as soon as the other team grabs the command of the series, the brothers didn't really have a fight back. And it's been like that for a lot of the Taiwan series that they have lost. Um, as soon as the other team starts taking command, um, the brothers didn't really have a say in it. They didn't really have a response. If you think about 2021 and 2022, both were against the Lions, and then in 2024, yeah, 2021, 2022, 2024, all 3 of those Taiwan series, the brothers had command from game 1, and then kind of uh, brought it home, since not never really relinquished it. 2020, I mentioned a lot. They had command at first, and as soon as the Lions started to fight back, they kind of crumbled a little bit, and then little by little they gave away the command of the series. In 2016, 2016, against the EDA Rhinos, they were up 2-0, up by a lot in game 3, but slowly and surely they started to lose command of the series, and then they never really gained it back. It's not like and it, and you can probably say, oh, that it's really hard it's really hard to fight when you don't have command, and it's really hard to fight back. Well, in 2023, between the series in the series between the Dragons and the Monkeys, that was a really good back and forth. One team gets command, but the other team fights answers right away and pushed all the way to game 7. When the brothers play, it's really weird. When they start losing command, they just lack a response. They lack an answer. It's like when they get jabbed a little bit, they just kind of stumble back and they don't really know what to do. They always have to land the first punch. I think that's that's what's lacking for the brothers to take a next step. And when you want to build a three-peat dynasty, or you want to build a true, you know, dominance, establish a true dominance in a league like Lamigo did, like the Union Lions did, like the Brother Elephants did many, many times, you got to be able to take a hit and answer back, because you can't just that you can't just expect to land the first punch every single time. And that's what's so great about three-peats. That's what's so great about dynasties. It's you've got to be able to win in different ways in order to withstand the challenges of a multi-year dominance, a multi-year run. Lamigo between 2015 and 2019 won 4 championships, and there were times when they were down 3-1. There were times when they were absolutely dominant, and there were times and they won on all those ways. The brothers between 2021, 2022, and 2024, it was really the gap really wasn't that close between them and the Lions, which credit to them for being so dominant. But at the same time, you've got to win in different ways. You've got to be able to answer, and you've got to be able to. If the other team has tremendous momentum, like the Monkeys, well, I'm sorry, that's just the way the playoff structure works. You've earned a right to guarantee a spot in the Taiwan Series, but then you've got to, at one point or another, you're gonna play a team with tremendous momentum and tremendous upset, basically upset energy, and you have to be able to withstand it. And to be fair, to be very fair to the brothers, as much as the Monkeys built a momentum in the first 3 games of the series and throughout the playoff, you had 4 days for the momentum to die down, and you had 4 days to regroup yourself. And in game 4, to be fair to you, you played a better game than the Monkeys in the first 7 innings. You put Pedro Fernandez on the ropes a few times. Fernandez had 2 walks in 6 innings with 4 hits allowed, and he gave up a homer. And to be fair, again, whenever the Monkeys grabbed the lead, you answered right back. It's 1-1, and you throughout the series, throughout the game, you had more. The brothers played a better game. They had more decent contacts. It's just the Monkeys just had an answer on defense so many times. It must have felt very suffocating if you're a Brothers fan. And again, from a 30 feet point of view, you're thinking, oh, this is just the way the Monkeys play. They must play with a tremendous defense, and that's just the way Japanese baseball works. But it's really just not. They just had it out of. I feel like they had an out of body experience in the playoff series, where they just comes out with back to back beautiful defensive plays to answer all of the challenges that the brothers are putting on them offensively. And then in the 8th inning, Chen Chengwei out of nowhere with the man on base sends a line drive to right field, and it goes out of the park, and it's a homer. And you're like, Chen Chengwei? Out of everybody, it's like the same home run that he hit against South Korea in the Premier 12, where that was the grand slam that kind of started the whole championship run, all the momentum. For Chen Wei, I mean, it's a different scenario, but it's a when it's a 1-1 tie with the Monkeys, the moment you're probably more um you've got to win game 4, and you probably are more on the back foot than the brothers are, despite the game score. Because if you lose game 4, again, it becomes a best of 3, and all 3 games are in Taichung, and then you lost the game with Pedro Fernandez on the mound, and Chen Wei sends one to right field, basically gives the Monkeys the 3-1 in the bottom of the 8th inning with how the brothers' offense looked in the first 4 games. You kind of that was game ender right there. The game ended in the bottom of the 8th inning, and as much as the brothers tried to put up a comeback at the top of the 9th, um, they showed a little bit of fight. They didn't get the runs across. The Monkeys win game 4, and now they hold all the chips. They hold all the chips. And to be completely transparent with you, I cannot sit here and start criticizing Brothers' decision with pinch hitting, with pinch running, because I just simply haven't watched enough games this year to really get to make uh, to to um um to decide whether those are good calls or not, especially with the brothers, which is so the amount of players that they play because their roster is so deep. It's really hard for me to sit here and evaluate whether this pinch hitting is a good timing. And a lot of the times with pinch hitting, pinch running, those managerial decisions, the results really determine how good it is from the outside. And I can tell you this. I can tell you this on the pitching side. I it was I I started to really focus and study which pitchers the brothers brought in the first 4 games of the series versus game 5. The reason for that is game 5 became a game where the Monkeys tried to lose the game as much as they could. It was like the Monkeys was paying back the dividends of all of the defensive highlights that they put together in the first 8 playoff games, and now they're just they're kind of returning all of the errors in the first inning, the first few innings, not just the first inning. But the brothers jumped out to a 3-1 lead in the first. They gave that lead back, but then at the end of the 6th inning, the brothers were up 7-3, and at the end of the 6th, they brought in 2 foreign pitchers in Game 5, Brandon LeBron and Jesus Vargas. Vargas had a 3.72 ERA. Brandon LeBron had a 1.94 ERA. And both of these players are new foreign pitchers coming into the 2025 season. And to be fair to the brothers and to the managerial staff, they were managing the first 7 innings as if all chips are in. And by the end of the 7th, it was a 7-4 game. Vargas gave up 1 run. Okay. To be fair, the first 7 innings they were managing as if it's an all-in game, and they were up 7-4 in Taichung. And at this point, you'll get all the wins you can get, right? And prior to Game 5, because of the long break and because every single game was very, very close, the brothers didn't really send a lot of different pitchers out there from the bullpen. Game 1, they brought in 4 pitchers. They were down 3-0 early, so it's the pitchers they brought in were it was clear who they were trusting. My point is, and in Game 1, it looked like they're bringing in their better bullpen pitchers, but not absolutely the best. In game two, again you have Wu Junwei, Jiang Chongchen, Cai Qizhe, Li Zhenchang. All four, two of these four were brought in game one. So and then it was a 2-1 game late in the game. It's a 2-1 game. Let's go back to game one. The brothers brought in Jiang Chongchen, who played in game two. Wang Kaicheng, Liu Jianqing both did not play in game two, but Li Zhenchang, CC Li did. So between games one and two, there were two pitchers overlapping. Game three. In game three, they were up. They were up 2-0 in the whole game, so they brought in their quote unquote the winning pitchers. So to hold the win. So you had Wu Junwei and Li Zhenchang, CC Li, and one had a hold and one had a save. Okay, so right now you've only still seen 6 pitchers from the bullpen in the first 3 games. You had a long break. You had a really long break, and it was a 1-1 game going into the 8th inning, so it was a close game. And then you brought in Wu Junwei in the 8th inning, who you trusted in games 2 and 3, and he gave up the home. Okay, you can argue about pushing the right or wrong buttons or not, but it's consistent with how they managed it. You bring in somebody like Wu Junwei or CC Li, but put Wu Junwei at that point because you're probably saving CC Li for the 9th inning because it is a 1-1 game. You're probably saving Liu Yanqing, or maybe Wu Junwei and CC Li are your 2 back-end pitchers, but Wu Junwei gave up a 2-run homer. You bring in Cai Qizhe to finish the 8th inning. Okay, that's fine. So what can we deduct from the first 4 games is that Wu Junwei, CC Li, maybe Liu Yanqing are basically your back end. Really, if you're tied or you're winning, that's the best pitchers you have. And then we've seen Cai Qizhe come in and finish the game when you're down 3-1, and you've had Jiang Zhongcheng come in and Wang Kaicheng come in when you're down 3-0 in game 1. But because games 2, 3, and 4, it was either a 1-run game, either you were leading or you were tied 1-1. You basically used three of your main pitchers, which is CC Li, Wu Junwei, and you can maybe argue Liu Yanqing. Okay. So we've determined 3 pitchers, maybe 2, between CC Li and Wu Junwei, right? Okay. Wu Junwei has pitched in, to be fair, Wu Junwei has pitched in games 2, 3, and 4, and he gave up a homer in game 4. So now the brothers, you're going into the 8th inning, you're up by 3, it's an all-in game. All the chips are in. CC Li is the comeback player of the year. 8th inning, up by 3. If based on the logic of the first 4 games, you would either bring in Liu Yanqing or CC Li. But the chip, I probably would have bet Wu Junwei, but it makes sense why he's not in, because he pitched in 3 straight games already and gave up a homer in game 4, a game-winning homer in game 4. So it makes sense why Wu Junwei is not in there. But you have Liu Yanqing, which is a lefty. I mean, to be fair, it's a lefty-lefty matchup. He's your lefty, but he's also been your closer multiple years. Or CC Li, you're probably not going to bring him in because you're going to save him for the 9th inning. Fine. But you brought in Wang Kaicheng, who is a lefty. Right? Let me double check on that. You brought in Wang Kaicheng, who is... Oh, sorry. Wang Kaicheng is a righty. My bad. I apologize. You brought in Wang Kaicheng, who was your pitcher. The first time he played, you were down 3-0. And you're trying to... it was... He didn't pitch for another week because, you had the long break in the middle. And you're like, oh... Okay. Again, this is one of those things where... It's one of those things where you can question because of how the results played out. He came in the 7th, in the 8th, and in the first at bat, he gave up a homer to Liang Jiarong, which all of a sudden brings the game to 7-5. And as much as we can sit here and really say, "Oh, that homer changed everything," it was still a 7-5 ball game in the top of the eighth. So, and you just brought him in, so it doesn't make sense logically for me to sit here and say you should have made a pitching change after just one at bat if you decided to put Wang Kaicheng in here. I can't tell, but at the same time, what I'm really going to question is why did you bring in Wang Kaicheng in at that point? I don't know a lot about him. I don't. In fact, you can probably deduce by now if you're really if you're a CPBL not perennial daily watcher of the brothers, you probably can tell I'm not the most knowledgeable person of the CTBC Brothers bullpen, but based on the logic of your managerial decisions in the first four games, and you've decided that this is an all-in game, you brought in LeBron and you brought in Vargas for the first 7 innings. You've put all of your foreign pitchers in. You got two more. You know, if you're gonna worry about game 6 and 7, you would not have put in 2 foreign pitchers in the first 7 for one game. Because you do have 2 more games to think about. And the way that you managed late in the game, you still brought in Zheng Haojun in the 11th inning, who is another one for starter. And so clearly, you've been managing a game where you're determining today I'm gonna go all in, but you brought in a guy that from the first 4 games of your first 4 games of the series, you didn't really bring in until you were down 3-0. And he hasn't pitched in a week. Honestly, if you brought in Cai Qizhe to start the inning, it made more sense because you brought him in on the game 4. Maybe you want him to take a break. Maybe you're trying to leverage the depth that you have, but this is not the time for you to leverage your depth. That's the only logical thing you think of. Like, oh, we have more pitchers than them and more usable pitchers than them, so we're going to leverage it. But again, it's becoming a game 2 of a 4-game streak, a four straight game series, and you've got to win all 3. It's not the time to leverage it. Being up by 3 in the 8th inning is not enough to leverage for you to start leveraging your depth. And so you give up a homer. It's 7-5, and then he gives up a walk, and you're like, oh, and I think you're the brothers. Now the game kind of runs to the plate, and then hold on, and then what happened? Homer, walk, hit, and then a infield single, and then a fly ball, and then the fly ball, but a bases loaded walk. And then it's a tied game. That 7th inning, that 8th inning must have been just, yeah. If you're my mom, who's a well-documented Brothers fan, absolutely livid about the bullpen. And if you're a Brothers fan, of course you're mad about your bullpen, but it just part of that is it doesn't make sense how they used it. And my take on managerial decisions have been well documented. I've said it many times. I said it many times in this show. A lot of the times, the results brings in the criticisms or the praises or the criticisms, right? And obviously, I did not look into this scenario without the results being played out the way it did. But based on the logic of how you manage the first 4 and 7 innings of work, when you look at your piece of work in the first 4 games and 7 innings in the 5th game 5, it doesn't make sense. It's inconsistent with how you decided to use this to play this game. If you're up 3-1, okay, top of the 8th, up by 3, you bring in Wang Kaicheng in, he gives up, you tie the game, whatever. Okay, you have the command, you have the momentum, but you don't. And depth being your advantage isn't really the advantage in this kind of a scenario. You gotta bring your best pitcher, and you let the game get tied, and then you bring a starter for the extra innings, which decided to challenge the best hitter on the Rakuten Monkeys, the best hitter, the captain, not the real captain, but the actual captain, the um the pillar of the Monkeys locker room and organization in Ling Hongyi, and you challenged him with the 151 kilometer per hour, it's a 94 mile per hour down Broadway, and not only was it down Broadway, it was kind of low. And I'm not a professional hitter. I am not anywhere close to being a hitter to play any sort of professional baseball. But am I wrong to think that a fastball with the same velocity up in the zone is faster for a hitter than being down in the zone? And if you're going to really challenge a hitter with their 94 mile per, I mean, it's not like 98. Jung Hao didn't have 98. He had 94, 95, which it's really good velocity for the CPBL. I'm not here to challenge how fast, whether his fastball is effective. I think it is, but it's not effective enough to pitch against the best hitter on the opposing team and throw it not only down Broadway but a little bit below, like it's like at the belt, a little bit below that. And it's like a perfect with that uppercut swing that Li Hongyu had. Perfect swing against a fastball, perfect timing, sends it to left field. Go ahead run, top of the 11th inning, you're up 3-1. Game is essentially over. And then you talk about the bottom of the 11th. The Monkeys, the Brothers did have a leadoff walk, but then Xu Jihong basically hits a ground ball, goes to first base. The ball gets bobbled, goes to the first base. It was all messy. Xu Jihong was safe at first base, but then he took like a little step to second base, which you just can't do that. And he was walking his way back to first base to act as if nothing has happened. The Monkeys tag him before he gets back to the base. They look at the review. They determine that Shu Ji-hong did go to second base because he did take a step towards that direction. You just can't do that. In a game like that, again, this is what I mean by, I get it. You're down by 2. I get it. It's a 3-1 series. I get it. Xu Jinhong is not a rookie. He batted clean up in this position, in this game. He's the longtime first baseman, arguably a top 2 first baseman in Taiwan right now. His bat was basically the only one the Brothers could rely upon. He's so important to this team. Again, he's a veteran. He's won championships. He's lost his fair share. You just can't have that very unfocused. Like, this is not game 74 in the middle of August in a 2,000 fan game on a Tuesday night. This is the game 5 of the Taiwan Series. You just can't make those mental mistakes. It's very interesting, honestly, to see the Brothers making those mistakes, being 2 years removed from Lin Weizhu's, a year and a half removed from Lin Weizhu's quote-unquote resignation. 2 years? 2 years. 2.5 years from Lin Weizhu's quote-unquote resignation, which he would never condone something like this. Not saying that the disciplinary issue is becoming apparent, but at a situation like that, you just can't make that mistake. And they did. And then any little chance of tying this game up or coming back just gets blown away. It's with a very unfocused mental mistake. And that is how the Monkeys won Taiwan Series. That is how they won. And now we look into the off season. By the way, congratulations again to the Rakuten Monkeys. I was ecstatic when Li Hongyi hit that home run. As a Monkeys fan, I don't hide that. I never try to hide it. And to be honest, coming into the season, again, I refer to my episodes with John Foster all the time. And look at the Monkeys. They're a team wanting to go 500, sneak into the playoffs, and then throw the ball up and see where it lands. And to be fair to them, this time they rolled the dice. They staved off the Hawks with their late season push. They made the playoff, which is, I believe, the if you're the Rakuten Corporation, that's all you want to do. You want to report to your bosses that you made the playoffs, and then that's how they did. And then they rolled their dice, and then they rolled a six, and they beat They beat two really good teams. My question is, and I'm not very optimistic about the answer to this question: how does the management team respond to this championship? Because it's very clear they've been running this team at a very cheap way. They've reportedly has been cutting back on food catering for this team with very little protein. They've fired their in-house chef. They've decided to buy takeout every time for every game with the lowest budget possible. I was like what, like $3 per person. Um, uh, it was something like, yeah, it was something crazy. It's $3 per person per meal. It's the budget they gave to the catering company. And then it was also found out that there were not so fun stuff they found in their food. They had salary situations with their cheerleading team, which was what it was keeping the team alive for all these years. But all of their stars have left. All of the stars that could go into free agency, Zhu Yuxian, Chen Junxiu, all of the cheerleading stars had left the team. The management team, if you look at the signs and you look at how it's being reported, it's being done at a very sad level. But they ended up winning the championship. So what does that say about this league? And to be fair, and I'll be 100% fair here, all of the players that performed exceptionally well in the playoff series were the players that was from the Lamigo Monkeys era and is still in the game. Lin Zhiping is over 40 years old. Lin Hongyu is up there. He's about to retire. Ling Li was drafted. Chen Chengwei and Li, they were all drafted and developed for much of the extent during the Lamigo Monkeys era. Everybody, a lot of the players that was picked up during the Rakuten Monkeys era have not panned out yet. Ma Jiesen might be one of the few. Song Jiaxiang is another one, but they're all up and coming. But the amount of reliance the extent of reliance the Monkeys have on their old veterans is alarming. And then you pair that with the Monkeys' second army team ranking last in each of the last two seasons, especially in 2024, it wasn't particularly close. This championship is going to give the Rakuten Monkeys management organization a full sense of security, a full sense of prosperity that they're going to try to hang their hat on for a foreseeable future, and that is, I believe, going to send this franchise back, ironically. And I think as a Monkeys fan, the hope that I have is that now this team has risen in value because of the championship. Maybe the Monkeys might think that this is a time to sell high and they let go of this franchise. Unless something drastic happens with their management, and this is a drastically different management team from the Rakuten Golden Eagles of NPB. It's not even the same like entertainment side. It's basically in the Rakuten Monkeys international division, which is separate from their domestic. It's not. We're not talking about the same branch in their huge conglomerate. I get it, but it's not. We're not talking about the same stratosphere in terms of management offices and management staff. It's a different staff, which gives me a very little confidence based on the reporting that's been done. And so, as a Monkeys fan, I'm very happy. but it's clearly Taoyuan is caring way more about this team than Rakuten is, and it's a little sad. It's a little sad. Um, so half the time as a Monkeys fan, I was kind of rooting for the brothers because I think it would be better for the CPBL if the brothers has had won, but that's not the way it panned out. And we're now going into the off season. We might save some of these stories for the off season, but Shiroshi has declared for the international free agency. SoftBank Hawks from Japan and a couple more teams from Japan are rumored to be very interested in signing Shiroshi. And the Japanese league, I'm not 100% expert in this kind of field, but my understanding is Japanese teams have a much deeper pocket than MLB teams in terms of international free agency because of the um, the free agency pool that MLB has for international free agents. Huang Zipeng for the Monkeys now can declare for free agency. Fan Guochen, the former captain for the Fubon Guardians, also has hit his 8-year um, uh, uh, what is 8-year tenure, so he can declare for free agency, and Stu Zhiji as well for the Uni Lions can declare for free agency. Those are probably your three biggest names in free agency this year. Um, that is it for today's Renzo Denishi, and we'll see you guys next time.